People often ask, how can you possibly work on something creatively for 4 years and still be into it? Okay. Every day you see something you've never seen before in your life here at Pixar. Every day I look forward, I can't wait to get to work and come in and like, what's today gonna have?
Oh, that's right, that's right.
John always says that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I think that's the attitude that he comes from when he comes into this building every day, is that he loves what he does and he doesn't feel like he's working. And it really makes everyone else's day a lot more enjoyable and you feel good about what you're doing.
How'd you like to come and see the world with me?
You mean it?
It is my absolute honor to introduce to you the first ever World Grand Prix.
Woo-hoo! Go McQueen!
I'm Paul Byrne. As you know, we're going to be talking to two people from Pixar. I'm going to introduce a lady first who is involved with Pixar for the last few years. She joined them for Up, and she's now the producer on this film. If you give a big hand to Denise Ream. Hi, Denise. I think whichever one you like. Yeah. And I'm not really sure how to introduce this next man. I think it would be fair to say he's been responsible for the greatest studio that's come along in Hollywood in many, many a decade. He has given us incredible movies through the years. Obviously, Toy Story. When you think about The Incredibles, Monsters, Inc., WALL-E, Up, and now with the Cars movies, I'll just say this is John Lasseter. Hi again, how are you? You've got a mic now behind you here. Here we go.
Thank you.
And you guys have been, it's about 3 or 4 weeks now you've been, this movie's been out, so you've kind of, you've gotten used to questions about it, I hope. You kind of, you know
well,
what
we
to
love
expect.
the movie, so it's fun to talk about it.
Well, I suppose the first thing, is that one working?
Hello?
There it is.
I suppose the first thing would be sequels are always a little bit tough for most people to approach. And I know for you, was it a very easy decision to make? I know this is based on a discarded scene from the first movie.
Yeah.
And was it kind of an easy decision? And once you made that decision, was it quite easy to make?
Well, as you know, in the film business, there's always a strong desire to do sequels to successful films. And most of the time, the films are, just kind of retelling of the same story, maybe with some changes or something different. At Pixar, we love our characters, we love the worlds we create, and the only reason for us to do a sequel is if we come up with a story that is as good as the original, but different. We like to do things differently. In the difference that we always look for is what is going to be the emotional core of the story, the reason for the story being, where what's the growth of the main character going to be. And with Cars, we were very interested in doing something really different because we always thought that the world that we created of cars being alive and there's no humans, you could actually, wherever we can go in the world, they can go as well. And so we had, as he mentioned, we had this idea. The spy movie idea came out of the original Cars. We had a scene in the original movie where Lightning McQueen, the character, is going to take Sally the Porsche on kind of a first date. And originally it was going to be at a drive-in movie theater. And we had to have a movie playing up on the drive-in movie theater. And we had started talking about what this could be. And at this point in time, developing the first Cars movie, the story was really like having, we were really stuck, and it was really hard work. So we decided to start working on this movie within a movie, and we spent far more time than we should have on that. And we came up with the idea for the spy movie, and we developed a character named Finn McMissile. Well, as we got the main story unstuck, and the setting for this scene shifted to a different place. It became the scene where they cruised. And so the spy movie got cut from the film, but we never forgot about it because we thought it could be really fun to see this, because one of the things I've always loved about spy movies are the cool spy cars with the gadgets. The little boy in me comes out with this kind of film, and so I thought, well, this could be really, really different, because in our world, the spy car and the spy are one and the same, and that's something we've never seen before. So this was kind of in the back of our heads as we started thinking about possibly doing a second Cars movie, wanting to do something really, really different with this sequel.
Foolishly, as a company, you've made nothing but hugely successful movies, which puts a sort of weight on each.
Foolishly,
yeah, because then you have expectation. If you like other studios made some crap movies, that would make people just feel a little less pressure every time you step up to direct a movie. Do you feel, given that you are such an integral part of Pixar, I don't know if you as an individual can sleep well the night before a movie opens, or whether there's still that sort of, I don't know how you kind of cope with that expectation that comes with a new Pixar movie?
We put actually more pressure on ourselves than anybody on the outside could do, because we always want each one of the Pixar films to be really, really good. We also want each film to be different than the ones before it. We don't ever want to get into a rut. We don't ever want to think that we know what we're doing, and so. But each film that we make is very hard. Every movie, every Pixar film at one point in time or another was the worst motion picture ever made. I mean, really, they were like bad. And so we were, but we trust ourselves. We trust the process of working and reworking the story. And we trust the ideas that we've come up with, and we wouldn't have started developing the film if we didn't feel like there was something there. And so we just will persevere and just keep working on it. And so we tend to, there is a kind of an in-joke at Pixar for each director, because when one movie comes out and does really well worldwide, then the kind of the weight goes to the next set of shoulders, and it gets heavier and heavier every time. So, especially the first-time directors doing it, they just pee in their pants, or so nervous because they don't want to be the one to say, "Aha, you're the one that had the first Pixar flop."
I should bring you in here.
I should say the producers feel the same way. We're nervous.
Well, I was going to say, Denise, I think you joined, you became associate producer of Up, I think it was, in 2006, and you're producer here, and I noticed from an early interview when you were here for Toy Story in Dublin, one of the questions I remember asking at the time was how many people were involved, and I think you said around 110, maybe it was roughly a little bit more, but 27 animators, I think 32 techies. I counted the amount of people involved with this. I think it was 3,436,422, something like that.
A lot of people.
As a producer, I mean, is that the most daunting thing, that you just know the scale of a production of this sort is just phenomenal?
Yeah, this was a big undertaking, biggest movie that Pixar's done, just in terms of scope. Going to all these countries and all the characters. We have lots of effects. The opening sequence was a big undertaking. So we had a big crew, but that's the part I love. It's a big, huge jigsaw puzzle, and it's fun to try to put together. And we just have awesome people at Pixar that feel really passionate, and they all want to make a great movie too. So it does help my job go a little bit more easily, I would say.
I know for you, John, with the first Cars movie, your late father, Paul, he was a Chevy parts dealer where you grew up in Whittier, California. You, as a teenager, worked with him, and you're combining your two loves, both automobiles and obviously cartoons. As a kid, there was nothing better than running home to see Bugs Bunny after school. And I don't know whether there's still that sort of feeling that this is a very personal kind of project. As much as each story is fictional and each story is created from imagination, this one's probably got a little bit more weight in regard to its connection to you as a person.
Both Cars movies were very personal for me because of my, my father, as he said, worked for a Chevrolet dealership. He was the manager of the parts department, and I used to work there as a teenager, and so I got my love of cars from my dad. Also, growing up in Southern California, which is such a car culture, it's yeah, I just love automobiles and love cars, and have gotten into kind of being a race fan. I've taken some race driving classes myself, and it's just I've always looked at objects, man-made objects, and kind of I love bringing them to life as characters. I've always loved that in the history of animation. When you look at the Disney movie, The Sword and the Stone, there's just a small part where there's a teapot and but the sugar bowl comes to life and keeps, I don't know if you remember that, he keeps loading more and more sugar into the tea. There's one of my favorite Disney cartoons of all time was this short called the Susie the Little Blue Coupe. And it's where the Disney animators in Walt Disney, they brought a car to life. And I've always loved that. It's one of my favorite characters. And when I was working with computer animation in the early days of Pixar, one of the things that I fell in love with computer animation, and that is the fact that with our tools we can make things almost look photorealistic. But I never want to try to reproduce anything that the audience feels like we're trying to reproduce reality. We're trying to do a live-action film. I like to take a step back, produce something that the audience knows does not exist. It is a fantasy. It is a cartoon. But then use those photorealistic tools to make it look absolutely real. And I think it's part of the entertainment value of our movies at Pixar is that the audience looks up on the screen and goes, well, I know this isn't real, but boy, it sure looks real. And with that, and it's part of the thing I've always really liked about computer animation. And so I started thinking about Susie the Little Blue Coupe and thinking about my love of cars. And just kind of, as I drive home from work and drive around, I kept looking out at automobiles and started thinking that if we bring a character to life, a car to life with computer animation, with all the tools that we know how to do with reflections and the getting the surfaces right and so on, and you could really make it feel like a real car. I said, could be something that no one's really seen before. And that's one of the things that I'm always interested in. And early people ask, how do you choose a story or something to become a Pixar film? And one of the things is trying to knowing our medium of computer animation, what it can and what it can't do. And I always steer things towards something it does really well. And the way that we can render things to make it look like it's painted enamel on metal, glass, the tires, the rubber, and all those things, all the things that make a car look like a car to you. When you drive around the roads, you kind of don't realize what makes a car really feel like a car, and it's primarily the reflections. The reflections you see in the enamel paint, the reflections you see in the glass, the chrome, these kinds of things. And it really says this is a real car. And I thought, if we could bring that to life and make it look like a real car, this could be really special. And so that's kind of part of where the beginning of this was. The other thing we decided to do, there's been a lot of animated cars before, and primarily when people look at the front of a car, they see that the headlights are the natural eyes of a car. And they are. And if we were to bring it to life, when I bring an inanimate object to life, the first thing I do is try to define what is the face. What is the face? You don't necessarily have to put eyes on it, but you have to define what is the face. If you think about Luxo Jr., the lamp that's always hopping in our logo, that's based on a animated short film that I made in the first year of Pixar in 1986. And with Luxo, the face was where the light bulb was, where it shined lights. And because when you define where the face is, this is where you can start getting the acting and make, as my mentors at Disney, the great Disney animators, Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas, they kept talking to me about make sure that your character feels like it's thinking. All of the motions that it does, all of the movement, looks like it needs to be generated by the character's own thought process. It's thinking. And when you define where the face of an object is, you can start doing that. For instance, if you just take and sort of move like this, you kind of look robotic, but then as soon as you turn the head first and then look, like, or you look down at something and then reach for it, it's one of the principles of animation, of anticipation, of you look at something before you reach for it. Walt Disney always called it aiming, but they call it sort of anticipation. It's coming back and reaching for it. But it helps you define whether the character's thinking. So this is what I always look at. So in looking at an automobile, the natural eyes are the headlights. Well, then if you did that, then the face is just right on the very front, and then the whole back of the car is the body, and it's laid out behind it, and it becomes a little more like a snake, where the face is on the very front and the body is laid way out behind it. What the Disney animators did with Susie the Little Blue Coupe is they moved the eyes from the headlights to the windshield. And I kept looking at this thinking, this is kind of so much better from an animation standpoint, because now with the eyes there, the mouth down in the front, the entire car body is actually the head of the characters, not the body laid out behind it. And then the four tires are like the four-legged character below it. And so we started analyzing this and thinking about this, and this from an animation standpoint, we could do a lot more, like the front tires become gesturing of the front hands. We don't lift them up too much off of the ground, but we kind of do a lot of leaning of the tires out. And what's also, as an audience, you are familiar with the front tires moving on a car, because that's how you steer, so it's a real natural thing. So it's this kind of analyzation and constantly thinking about going back to what you as an audience and what we're familiar with, and then showing it to you in a way that you've never seen before. I always call that the kind of foundation with your audience. If you can connect with people and make them look at it, and all these things that we kind of planned and thought of, you look at it and go, yeah, it feels like a real car. And then it comes to life and you start talking, and pretty soon you just are used to it as a character. But every now and then through the movie, we're always reminding you it's a car. And one of the things that our animators always, one of the principles of animation is squash and stretch. And every animation student, it's the first thing you kind of learn on how to really get your animation flexible. The animators, when they first sat down with our car characters, they want to just bend the car body all over the place, and it became like rubber almost. They became like these animals running around. And I kept saying that if you do that and then render it so it looks like it's enamel paint, yet it's moving like it's rubber, no longer is it believable anymore that it's a car, that it's made of metal. And there's something that I call, as we create something in computer animation, I call the integrity of the object. You have to respect the integrity of the object. Hand-drawn animation is a different thing. You can go to town. If you watch Susie the Little Blue Coupe, they're bending her all over the place. And she's very flexible, lots of squash and stretch, and it works great. It's hand-drawn animation. It doesn't have the reflections that you're used to. As soon as you go into computer animation, I saw this when I first started working with computer animation back in the early 80s, that there's a different thing. There's a different set of rules that go to this, and that you have to respect the integrity of the object that you're creating, and you have to animate it so that it has the same kind of weight, that it feels like that. And so one of the things we did with the automobile characters was we got in there and we really started studying, and we went out to a parking lot near Pixar, and we took a whole bunch of our cars, different years and modern cars and stuff, and we tried to drive fast turns, and we were videotaping this and quick stops and all like that, and we studied it very closely. And so the animators got used to, in looking at this footage and driving the car and looking at other, how the cars move, is to what are we used to seeing that moves on the car? Number one, the suspension, right? The body is rigid, but it's always moving on the wheels. There's some flexibility in the wheel, so you always, you know when a tire is sort of low because it's a lot more squishy, and it can kind of roll over curbs and things like this. So we started looking at all these elements to say, this is where we can get squash and stretch. The other thing we found is we can move the bodies of the cars but we tend to hide it in a fast movement. But when they're just talking or still, we do not move the bodies of the cars because we don't want to break that belief that it is a 3,000-pound automobile made of steel. It's not made of rubber. And so it's this kind of philosophy that goes into the building of the believable world, making these characters alive. And so it's so fun, and we've done tremendous amounts of work in the first Cars, and as we're approaching the second Cars movie, it's like this foundation, this believable world that we've created that took a tremendous amount of effort, not just the way things look, but the way things move, the logic of the world, the rules of the world, all those things. It was really fun to be able to then kind of think of a new story. I always say that you have to do three things really well to make a good movie. Tell a compelling story that is not predictable, that keeps the audience on the edge of their seat. Then you populate that story with really memorable and appealing characters, and you put that story and those characters in a believable world. And that's something that we strive to do in each one of our films. And we don't try to do a realistic world because we can with computer animation, but we try to make it so that it's a believable world for the story you're telling. And it was really fun to take all that knowledge that we developed in the first movie and apply it to something completely different, like a spy movie.
I was going to say that I know the inspiration was partly The Man from U.N.C.L.E., a show that you liked when you were a young man,
Yeah.
and now your own sons, the Bourne movies were a big influence as well, and that idea that you sort of hit a very different kind of film to the sort of Capra-esque Radiator Springs story of the first film. This one's a bit more like Transmission Impossible or Michael Bay doing Thomas the Tank Engine. There's a lot of action there. I don't know whether that was a kind of maybe just a deliberate thing of, well, let's give them something entirely different to what we gave them before, because for a lot of people it's almost a surprise that this is a very different movie to the first Cars.
Yes.
Next question.
He's interviewed me way too many times. It's like, well, you're using all my answers.
That was all original material.
Yeah, we were very excited about doing the... I don't know if you remember, did The Man from U.N.C.L.E. show here in Ireland when you were kids? It was so awesome. Oh, my God. I was a little kid. I was born in 1957, so I was like the perfect age. It came out in 1964, and I was like the perfect age, and I just lived for this. It was like really the first spy thing I'd ever seen. I didn't go see the spy movies in the theaters that were out at that time, and so this was it for me. And then I don't know if I was really blown away by the first Bourne Identity because it just elevated the genre to another level, and so I was very excited about that. And with the two sequels, I think were great that they did. And so I have 5 sons, and we really kind of love watching those films. And so I was very inspired by that to try to take and not make a parody of a spy movie like an Austin Powers, which I find the first one really fun, but I wanted to make a spy movie. It's just with cars as characters, but still we were striving to get sort of a character arc into the story with a story of Lightning McQueen and Mater and their friendship, because we still wanted to have a bit of a heart to the spy movie.
For both of you, just the idea that we've spoken about, the idea that with Pete Docter and Brad Bird and Andrew Stanton and all the other directors have joked about the weight that goes on every director that steps up to the plate and see if they get a home run. This did, I think, over the opening weekend, I don't know if anyone told you this, but $66,135,507. Would that feel like another day at the office, or do you actually kind of react and I don't know if you throw small children in the air or do you feel, well, this is kind of what we thought would happen?
We were very excited about that. You always are, because you are a nervous wreck every opening weekend. It's the first time Denise was a full producer on a film, and so
it was really a nervous wreck. And but we were really pleased. I mean, we ultimately, the first movie was so beloved. You just want to make sure that the people that loved the first movie loved the second movie as much, and that was what we really, was important to us. But
well, I think so. You've got to in the realm of being the Beatles now. I mean, where the expectation and the adoration from critics is so huge that every step you take is sort of analysed and critically kind of, they're trying to figure out exactly what you're thinking here and what's going to happen next. And with this film, it was the first time that, I know when I interviewed you the day after it premiered, Variety and Hollywood Reporter absolutely adored the movie. I enjoyed the movie. And then a few reviews came that there was a sense that this wasn't, as good as Toy Story 3 or as good as whatever. And I don't know whether you feel you were just due a certain amount of backlash, whether because it's primarily a kind of kids movie that the critics are not going to get the same kind of kick out of it that the audience you made it for. But I don't know if that's true or whether none of that is.
Well, I mean, it's simple. We don't make movies for critics. We never have. We never will. No, sorry. I know you'll pan the next movie then. So, but we don't. I mean, we make movies for our audience and for ourselves, and because we like the movies that we make, and we're that type of audience, and so we really focus on our audience, and we. I mean, when you get the great reviews, great. When the first Cars movie didn't get a lot of great reviews either, so for some reason the subject matter doesn't lend itself to what the critics are looking for, especially in kind of the New York and LA areas. But that's like, I don't really make movies for them. So, but the movie Cars became kind of a bigger movie than any film we've made because it kept growing in popularity long after it was out of the theaters. So it's like the people who didn't necessarily see it in the theaters finally discovered it, and and it's a very special film, and I think this is really fun in that way too, to where it's so we really put our heart and soul into each film we make, and it's really for our audiences.
Well, I'm sure both of you are aware of just the love that's out there for Pixar. There is this sense that this is, as I said before, probably the best studio that's come around in decades upon decades, and that idea that you have such a dedicated following, it's almost cultish. I'm sure if you could, guarantee some sort of alien contact, Tom Cruise would join you straight away. Do you feel that there's a sort of a sense of there are people out there who absolutely live and breathe Pixar? They have a feeling, well, this is just a quality stamp that these are the guys that I'm going to go to every time.
When we were making Toy Story, we started working on it in 1991. It came out in November of 1995. Pixar was originally just a computer company that did software as well, and there was a small group of us that did the animation. And so in 1991, Steve Jobs helped make a deal with Disney and to do the first feature film. And so we went so as we were getting close to the end of this, there was there was a business deal that was going to happen to where they were going to do a public stock offering for Pixar. It was going to take us public. And so all these business guys started coming through, and they started talking to me as I was finishing Toy Story, and they kept talking about the business plan, that they had to sell this to the Wall Street types and all that stuff. And I finally sat in one meeting, and I said, I mean, you guys are spending a lot of time. The business plan is really simple. Just give them one sheet of paper with one word on it: quality. Period. That's it. Quality is the best business plan. And to me, I said that's it, because if you can make a great movie, and the next movie you do is a great movie, and you keep doing that, isn't really that the best plan? And if you do a toy or you do a DVD or something like, it's the best that's out there. You never ever let it go. Steve Jobs was our CEO until in 2006 Disney bought Pixar, and he's still very close to the company, involved in the company on a weekly basis. He said to me, one day, John, it's like the way that the audience feels about your studio or your brand. It's like the way the customers feel about Apple. It's like a bank account. You can make deposits and you can make withdrawals. And if you make too many withdrawals, a deposit is making a great movie, or in his case, making an iPhone or an iPad, or the iPod or the computers and stuff like that. Everything's so great. It just makes the brand that much more. It's a deposit. But if you start producing crap that you know is crap and you put your name on it because you think, oh, they'll buy it because it has a name on it, then that's a withdrawal. And the more and again, like anybody's bank account, the more withdrawals you make, if you make too many withdrawals more than deposits, then you're bankrupt. And so that, I never forgot that. It's such a strong metaphor for me of like why we should always just do everything the best it could be. And we just keep doing that. Now, granted, Pixar's 25 years old this year. We've only made 12 movies. If you compare that with any other studio out there, it's like nothing in 12 years. I mean, frankly, it's been 16 years since Toy Story came out. So you can even say in 16 years we've only made 12 movies, and that's still not very much. But I would, to me, it's like I think that Pixar has a pretty good standing out there in the world with the audience because of each one of those 12 is a really great film that you can watch again and again and again. And that's to me just the philosophy that we'll always have. Now, the last thing in the world we want to do is to have each of those movies be similar. We want them to be really different. And so, to me, part of, I think, what's fun about going to a Pixar film is that you're going to be entertained, but it will be something different. And even with our sequels, we don't going to just keep doing the same old thing, when we do a sequel to our films. And the reason why we're doing the sequel is that we love the characters we've created. And they're like friends of ours almost. We spent 4 years creating the original film, and you want to kind of revisit them. Like I love the characters from Monsters Incorporated, Sully and Mike, and those characters are just some of my favorites in that world of the monster world. And so we've been talking a long time about what we could do that could be a new story with that character. So we finally came on an idea that we thought was really fresh and different than any other sequels we've done. And that's where when you start the first movie, Monsters Incorporated, Sully and Mike are best friends. We thought, well, why don't we tell the story, a prequel, that how they became best friends and how they met. And so we're creating a story called Monsters University where they met at college, and they didn't like each other at the beginning, and they grow to like each other. And it's really fun. I mean, it is really different, really fun. And it's just taking the whole university college world and looking at it from the point of view of a monster world, a monster college. And so it has really, it's really, really fun and very different. Again, it's different than Cars 2 and different than the Toy Stories.
I should ask you too, Denise. Pixar have a reputation. I've been lucky enough to go to Pixar a few times out in San Francisco, and it kind of is the happiest place on earth. There is that sort of environment where you just could imagine you'd like to live here forever and ever. It's somewhere between Ben and Jerry and Tom and Jerry, or there's a sort of, an Apple Mac store meets Pee-wee's Playhouse. There's so much fun going on. I don't know whether when you walked in that first time, whether you realized this isn't like other studios.
Well, I've actually not worked very many studios. I've been fortunate. I spent a lot of years at a studio across the bay. And when I came in, I was just, I was obviously thrilled. And I was just, I guess, primarily excited about working on really great movies. I, unfortunately, sometimes didn't have a choice of what I got to work on when I worked at Industrial Light and Magic. And so there were some great ones, and there were some ones that they were fun to work on, but I wanted to be involved with helping to craft the story and to really make a great movies. And to me, there's no studio like Pixar, so that was what was important to me. And there's the added bonus of it being a fun place to work too, with really nice people.
And those movies that weren't particularly good in Industrial Light and Magic, can you tell us which ones they were?
No comment.
I'm going to open it to the audience, and I just give I know there's animators in the audience would love to ask you a few questions, but just before we do, maybe you could just tell me the plot of Toy Story 4, and then we can move to the audience.
I'm really excited about more of your country people seeing Cars 2.
Interesting plot. It'll be an interesting development. Now, I'm not sure how we can do this. If there are animators, anybody wants to ask John or Denise a question, I don't know whether there will be microphones, actually. I can see now. That's great. There are microphones. So if anyone wants to put their hand up, if anyone's got an incredibly intelligent and insightful question, we could ask. I see somebody up here now, yeah.
Hi, John and Denise. Thanks
there.
for coming today. Just a quick question from the voice acting side of things. You often hear interviews with actors like Tom Hanks or whatever saying that over the process of recording the voice, they have to go into the booth a few times over the course of a few years and do extra lines or change lines. So if that's the case, I mean, how do you get an actor like Michael Caine or somebody like that to commit so many times to come back? Or would their lines be mapped out more clearly? I mean, does the script evolve? What I'm basically asking is in a very roundabout way. Does the script evolve a lot from the initial script to what we see up on the screen?
It evolves tremendously. Most people kind of have this assumption that you kind of write a script, you'll do versions, and then, okay, it's like live action. That's the script we're going to film, and you go off and film it. Animation's not that way. We quickly go into storyboards and use the story reel, where we make a version of the movie using the storyboard drawings, and we put our own voices to it, temporary voices, temporary sound effects, temporary music, and you can sit back and watch the movie before you even go into production, before you do any recording sessions. We will, in the early stages of developing a new movie where you're creating a new character, casting, we'd like to cast early on because it helps us create the character. We will cast an actor not by how big of a star they are, but by, one, how good of an actor they are. Number two, does their own personality, does their own sensibility fit with this character? Because we don't want people to put on voices. We go to actors who are kind of more playing themselves or being closer to who they are. And then we like to have actors that can kind of make the part their own, do a little ad-libbing, whatever, but they can kind of make the part their own so it sounds more, it's more interesting. It's more themselves. So it doesn't feel like it's just reading lines. It really the goal is you want this character to so come alive that it is this character. You don't think about the actor. You don't think about the writing. You don't think about anything. And especially like when you hear kind of put on voices in Los Angeles, there's a whole group of very talented people that do the voices, kind of a lot for television, animation, and so on. And they can do any voice you want, but it sounds like a put-on voice. And that's why we tend to go to the Owen Wilsons of the world, and Michael Caine, Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, those guys, because they're kind of playing themselves. They're doing their own voice. And so we will always start early on with one recording session. We'll come in there and we will do a few scenes so that we can then take what we've recorded back. We get to know the actor and so on. Take the recordings back, put it up against, sort of the story reels and see how things are playing. Sometimes this stuff's so good we just kind of put things into production. Most of the time we don't really expect to get anything from the first session. Each session is about 4 hours long with the actor, and that's plenty, We typically work around their schedule, so we tend to go to them where they are. Most of the time we're in Los Angeles. We'll fly down to Disney, has a great recording studio. We'll go to New York City because a lot of actors tend to live there because of all the Broadway scene. And occasionally we'll get actors who live in London, like Michael Caine. And so we'll come over to London. We tend to go to them. We do have two very nice recording studios at Pixar. And so we like to get people to come to Pixar if they can. Like Larry the Cable Guy, the American comedian, he lives in a part of the country where there's really no recording studio. So he loves to come to Pixar, so he'll always make the effort to come to Pixar. But we will... The development of our stories is that we will kind of work and rework these story reels, because to me we don't. If you think about live action filmmaking, you have a script, then you go out and shoot principal photography, so that means that it's a scene with on location or at a set and where they blocked it out, and you shoot every scene from many different angles and you produce coverage. In animation, as many animators are working in the audience, it's creating the animation is so labor intensive you can't afford to do coverage, and so therefore you only have one chance to do every scene. So how do you know it's going to be right? Well, we use the story reel as a way to edit the film in advance of going to the movie. And if I show you any first pass at the first pass at the of any Pixar film, it's very different than the final product, because it's we just, it's like a journey. You kind of work, and we look at our films internally. We have screenings internally to Pixar every 3 to 4 months, and then we all get together after the screening and talk about it and kind of give notes to the director. There's no mandatory notes. There's no hierarchy to the notes, meaning my notes aren't any more important than an animator's. And so everybody kind of gives notes, and so then the director and his story team then go back and collect these notes and kind of start working on the story, doing revisions of it. Some stuff really lands, and the sequence really doesn't change much from the beginning, like the Army Man sequence in Toy Story. Really, when Joe Ranft storyboarded it, it's virtually the same because it was so good. Other stuff, like in every movie has a sequence we will do like 30 times, but if you remember in Monsters Incorporated, the scene up in the Yeti's cave where Mike and Sully kind of split up, we must have done that scene 40 times. The scene in Toy Story where at the beginning the staff meeting, we call it, where Woody's telling everybody that Andy's birthday party's been moved to today, we did that scene many, many times. In fact, we went into production, and then I kind of redid it like 3 times after that. And so we strive to try to make these changes before you go into production. And we will not put something into production, a sequence, until it's working really great in the story reel, because there's no amount of great animation will save a bad story. And I think we're the only studio that really has the guts to and everybody in the studio wants it to be a great movie. No one wants us to put something in we know is not working just because we're trying to meet a schedule or something. And I say this to people, it's like, who's going to fly around the world to in front of every screening, and stand up in front of the audience and say why this movie is successful because it came in on time, on budget, but it's a piece of crap? You have 4 years to make a film. It's like I said, we have every chance to make it right. Let's do that. Now, like working with Denise on Cars 2, she was phenomenal in wanting it to be great and knowing there were some problem sequences, and she just wants us to get it right. And then when we get it right, then it's like let's make it. Let's figure out a way to do it. Now, as one of the pressures that you have as a director is that the budget of a film is people and time. That's it. It's like, how many people do you have for this amount of time? That's what you have to make your film. And even at Pixar, we have very limited budgets, and that's what we have to work with. And we will, and so that you better get this thing right. And so sometimes you have to work really hard and turn around things very fast. That's why we love working with digital editing systems like the Avid, and we now are doing most of our storyboarding on Cintiq tablets. We have a drawing program that's all designed for our story artists, and so they could deliver stuff very fast, and we can make changes very fast, and we try things out, and we'll cut it down. But it's like when it kind of hits, that it's right, and so it's very important to do this. So with the actors, then we'll go back, because we've made changes to things, and we'll go back to the actor. The lead characters, like a Lightning McQueen in this movie, Mater, Finn McMissile, Holly Shiftwell, we'll go back to them about 10 times, 10 different sessions. The ones towards the end are much shorter because we're just hitting like a few lines here and there, and sometimes we bring people in for one line right at the very end. But we'll keep tweaking, all the way to the end. And we'll explain the reasons. And now, as a director going in with these actors, it is a challenge. Tom Hanks always said this is the toughest acting he's ever done. This is what they call in like theater work black box acting, right? They walk in, because you think about most actors are in costume. They're on a set with other actors. There's a lot for them to feed off of, or on a theatrical stage, or on a TV set. And with animation, they're usually by themselves. With rare occasion we can get on actor schedules, we can get 2 actors into the recording studio at the same time, and we will work with them, and I will work with the actor And to me, it's my job to paint the picture in their head, to give them all the things they could pull from. You know, how far away they are from some other actor, how loud the ambient noise is. The most important thing is all the underlying emotion that's going on in every scene. I'll talk to them about what happened right before, what's happening right after it. And then we have someone who will always read against them, you know, all the other parts and stuff. And so we'll work with that. And that's one of the joys of my job. The other thing I always look for in the recording sessions is spontaneity. Because animating a film, as many animators in the audience know, there's no spontaneity in animation. You're laboring over the animation frame by frame by frame. And so, but in the recording studio, you can get spontaneity. You can get something that is just kind of magic. There's a catchphrase that Lightning McQueen does, because it's lightning, he goes, ka-chow. And where that came from is I was sitting in the recording studio, and I always let the tape roll. It's now all digital, so, you know, I record everything from the moment we walk into the studio, especially the actor. And I was talking to Owen Wilson, and I said, you know, every little boy is born with his own set of sound effects. I mean, every guy here knows what I'm talking about. When you're playing in the backyard, you have your own sound for a hand grenade, a pistol, a machine gun, lightning, thunder, you know, engine noise, shifting gears, all that stuff. Every kid has that, you know. So I turned to him, I said, what was your sound as a little kid for when, you know, lightning or thunder? And he went through this whole litany of these really funny sounds, and they were all kind of ka-ching, chow, ka-chow, ka-chow, like that. And I kept thinking about, you know, as he was doing this and we were recording it, I thought this could be something where here's this, like, arrogant guy who always strikes a pose for all the paparazzi and stuff like that, and he has this you know, mylar lightning bolt on the side, and it could flash, you know, the reflection and go ka-chow, you know, and stuff like that. And so that's where it came from, but purely kind of ad-libbing. Toy Story. If you remember when, you know, towards the end, Buzz Lightyear's got the gigantic rocket strapped to his back. Woody is there, and they're on an RC car, and he runs out of battery. And then they remember, you know, it's like the rocket, the match. You know, thank you, Sid. And he strikes a match, and he's there, and everybody knows, I know what's going to happen now. They're going to light it, and they're going to use the rocket to catch on. And all of a sudden, whoop, a car drives over, blows out the one match he has. And I explained all this to Tom Hanks, and I said, I just need a no from you, a really like no, you know, just sort of put your all into the no. Well, Tom gives me 20 no's in a row, just because it's just, one of these will work for you. You know, so he just, no, and he just goes on. And it's the funniest thing you've ever heard, the whole run. So we used them all. You know, and you can't plan this kind of stuff. You can't write this stuff. This is what getting a great actor who can make it their own is so valuable to you. My good friend in Japan, Hayao Miyazaki, I don't know how that guy makes his brilliant films, because they record the dialogue after they do the animation. I'm amazed by that. You know, I'm just amazed by that. You know, he makes brilliant movies. You know, and it's like, that guy's a genius, you know. He starts storyboarding the movies himself from the beginning, and he just gets to the end. And then they make the movie. And then he records the dialogue after they do the animation. And then he makes Spirited Away, you know, or Howl's Moving Castle, or Totoro. You just go like, how do you do this, you know? And he's a very modest guy, so... I dug through his trash can once and got some of his drawings out that he discarded. So I'm a true Miyazaki fan. He told me, those are bad ones, and he gave me some discarded drawings. It was from Spirited Away. He was working on the storyboard for Spirited Away. And so he gave me these drawings, and I had him sign them, and I framed them, and they're hanging in my office. And he visited me once, and he looked at those. There's a whole sequence he discarded. Oh, that was really good. I shouldn't have cut that from the film. So.
I know we only got like a few minutes left, so if there is another question out there, I'll have to be very deep and emotional, because it is we've literally got 5 minutes left. But while we're waiting for
answers.
If anybody gonna, I don't know if you've got a hand up. Oh, here we go, over here. Great. Are there many others besides Miyazaki now that you get a kick out of? Because I think
Brad
Pixar helped
Bird.
revitalize so many studios and so many animators.
I mean, the recent animated films that I've really been inspired by, I think, is Henry Selick's Coraline. You know, I thought that was absolutely magnificent. One of the best 3D films, too. I think one of the best animated films ever made was Brad Bird's The Iron Giant, which I think is just, like, magnificent, you know. So, and I'm lucky enough to work with Brad. He and I went to college together. Okay.
I'm really excited for Brave next year, and just wondering what the challenges were in creating a female hero.
We've been looking forward to creating, coming up with a story that has a female main character for a long time. We have this, Brave is very exciting for the studios. It's the first Pixar film with a female lead character. It's the first Pixar film that has kind of a fairy tale-like story with magic and spells and that kind of stuff in it. And it's the first Pixar film that's kind of a true period film, too, because that's an extreme challenge for computer animation, because with a period film set in medieval Scotland, it's just there's everything has got a sense of history to it. And the computer likes things that are absolutely geometric. And in a period film like that, there's nothing geometric about the stuff. It's very organic. So all the advances that Denise and I and our team made on Cars 2 to up the level of complexity of what the studio can do, they're really using and utilizing on Brave. The creating the story with it's I wouldn't say it's any more challenging creating a story with a female lead character than a male lead character. It's all hard, you know. Creating the stories like we do, these original stories, is really, really challenging. We're constantly pushing ourselves to make sure it's great. But knowing it's our first female lead character, it has even more importance to us. And so we're putting a lot of effort into this film. It's been in development for quite a while at the studio, but we want to make sure that it's really great. And it's, it's had its share of problems like all of the Pixar films. But we're on to, it's working really well now, the story, and we're very excited about it. And I can't wait to kind of get back home to see all that they've done on it, because it's pretty amazing. One of the things that's very challenging technically is, which you don't really think about, is cloth. You know, the human figure in computer animation is the hardest thing to do and to make convincing, because as an audience, we look at one in the mirror every day, and we look, across the dinner table. We know what they look like. If it's not absolutely believable, then you don't buy it. We always like to take a step back from trying to reproduce a real human being and try to do something, humans that are slightly caricatured, like the characters in The Incredibles and Ratatouille and so on. Our first real attempt at a really good lead character human being was in the short film Jerry's Game, if you remember that, where the old man plays the chess. That was our attempt with the clothes and stuff like that. And so that was kind of led to the work that we did in The Incredibles. But in the case of Brave, one of the things that we've kind of, in doing all the design work, it's layered clothing. It's clothing that has different weights, heavy wools versus silks and those kinds of things. We can make it kind of look like it, but as far as the falling, the way that they drape over the bodies. Also, we've done tremendous new work with muscles in the structure kind of the bone and the muscles over it, and the skin, and then the hair, and then there's fur, and the incredible hair that's the characters have. When you see the designs, they're pretty amazing. So there's quite a bit of a challenge. There's horse characters in it. There's bear characters in it, so that they're trying to really make those real believable, make them, sort of work for the stylized, caricatured world that we're creating, but they, really have a sense of power to them. But, all that comes, every bit of technical development at Pixar is driven by the needs of the story. What does the story need? What can we not do now? And we have to work on it. So it's been a really challenging film, but we're very excited about it. And I hope you guys will like it, because it's a really different film for Pixar.
I know that we're going to have to wrap up, but I just want to say, and I wanted to bring it up earlier, but we're dealing with a man here who in the early 80s Disney decided was a little bit too innovative and a little bit too pushy when he tried to make The Brave Little Toaster a digital movie, and Disney just weren't interested in the idea of digital, and they let John go, and it's just an incredible kind of prodigal son story to end up with a studio that has made, I think, movies that will stand the test of time, the way Bambi and Dumbo and Snow White and Pinocchio, they'll be part of our lives and our children's lives and their children's lives. So I just want to say a big, big thank you. I think we should all give a big round of applause for both Denise Ream and John Lasseter.
Thank you very much.
Made up. You know I'm just a tow truck.
It's his cover. Brilliant.
Am I missing something?
No one realizes they're being fooled because they're too busy laughing at the fool.
Is that how you see me?
That's how everyone sees you. Isn't that the idea?
Mater! I'm sticking by you the way you always stick by me!
Ready?
Is the Polkmobile cat?